I'm Sherry and this is Gardening in the North. And today we're going to be filling our new raised beds using the Hügelkultur method. For those of you that aren't familiar with this method, it is the German word for mounding or hilling your garden space. Basically, you're taking all of your yard waste, your natural materials, your biomass that you have on your property, and you are basically mounding it or hilling it in layers and then covering it with your soil. Then you're planting your plants in it, and basically what you're doing is you're giving your plants the best soil possible. Now, it will take a couple years for everything to decompose and really break down, but as it's breaking down, you're giving the roots of your plants the best nutrients possible. There are a few reasons why using the Hügelkultur method is the way to go. For me, with my brand new raised beds, it's going to be pretty expensive for me to fill them with compost. And so using the Hügelkultur method saves me on spending all that money that I would have had to spend if I was to fill them just with soil. Using the Hügelkultur method means that you're actually using natural resources that you already have, free resources that you already have. And for those of you that want to try this method but don't necessarily have a wooded area near you or on your property, I know that in my municipality, our municipality goes around and actually trims back the trees that are on the boulevards of some of the country roads, and they leave all the logs and brush there for the residents to come and collect it and use it as they wish. And I'm lucky enough that ours just did that. So I have collected a whole bunch of brush and logs that were already cut down. So let's talk about the other reason why you would want to use the Hügelkultur method in your raised beds. We all know that raised bed gardening means that we have to be a little bit more diligent on making sure that the plants that are planted in those beds have the water that they need. They dry out before in-ground gardening spaces do. And so we have to make sure that they are always moist so that our plants don't dry up and die. Now, with the Hügelkultur method, when you're placing all of your logs in the bottom of your bed, essentially what you're doing is you're adding sponges to your bed. And what I mean by that is you're going to add logs to the bottom of your bed. And then you're going to add some soil, a tiny bit of soil, just to fill in the cracks. You can also use some leaves, you can use wood chips, you can use manure, and you want to fill in the cracks where those logs aren't filling in. And then you're going to slowly and very lightly layer the rest of your box with those items, or really any biomass that you have available to you. And you are going to lightly layer them. And when I say lightly, why I'm saying that is you want to make sure that your bed, once you're done, has the drainage it needs, because those logs on the bottom are going to swell up with water, and that's what you want. Having those logs swell up with water while they get ready to decompose means that they're helping to keep the moisture in your raised bed, and that's exactly what you want. Now, if you were to start layering your beds with, let's say, leaves, and you put in a really thick layer of leaves in your bed, potentially what you're doing is putting a blockage in your bed so that the water can't get to any of the layers underneath those leaves. So when you're adding leaves and wood chips and manure and brush and anything else that you're adding, you really want to be careful that you're not adding them too thick, because the idea of this method is that the water can drain through and get to everything and start decomposing everything that you've put into that bed. Now, some of you are probably wondering how you can use this method in your existing garden. And there are a couple ways. So if you are looking to expand your garden space, then you could actually start a Hügel garden right beside where you're currently gardening. And what I mean by that is you don't need to have a raised bed. Traditionally, this method is not used in raised beds. It's used as a hill or a mound. So beside your current existing garden, you could start laying down your logs, your brush, your leaves, your compost, or not your compost, your manure with a bit of compost mixed in, and cover it with your compost or your soil, whatever you're using, and start planting in it. Now, for those of you that already have an existing gardening space and you use raised beds and you're not looking to expand, but you're looking to maybe try this out, you have brush, you have logs that you want to get rid of, and this is a perfect way to use them. What I would suggest to you is that you start off small. So maybe you take one bed at a time and you remove all of the soil from that bed, place it onto a tarp or in some bins or a trail or whatever you have available to you. And then you start laying down your logs and your branches and your sticks and your leaves and any other biomass that you have available to you. You're then going to take the majority of that soil that you removed and you're going to place it back onto your bed. And basically what you've done is created a Hügelkultur bed, a raised bed garden that you already have. Now you will have soil left over, and that's okay. I'm sure there's other places in your garden that you can use that soil, but that is a great way to add nutrients to an already existing gardening space. So let's take a look at my raised beds. I did a video last week on building these beds out of recycled barn material. And I have to tell you that I absolutely love these beds. They are about 3.5 feet tall, which will allow me to garden in them without having to bend over, without having to be on my knees. I can just walk up to them and, prune and harvest whatever I want. I'm really excited about them. But a couple things I want to show you. We did have to dig them into the area that they're in. They're on a bit of a hill. Now, I didn't think it was horrible. My husband said that they were definitely not level, went and grabbed his level, and they were about 5 or 6 inches off on one side. So he has dug a trench for them. He has placed the south side of the beds into that trench and has leveled off the beds for me. So now I can start filling them. So I want to take you over. I want to show you what else we did after leveling them off, and then let's get started filling them up. We were able to get our hands on some free horse manure mixed with hay, as well as some wood chips. So that is going to add an amazing free resource to these boxes. Now, we did buy a couple yards of compost, but again, that's going to be for the top, I'm going to say 8 to 12 inches of the beds, and that's it. That's all I'm going to do this year. So again, another free load of wood chips. And I just want to show you, if I stand back here, you can see that the boxes are now level, and the south side of the boxes, so that's this side over here, this side here, they're all dug in. You can see that they're lower there, and that the boxes now look a little bit more like stepping down the hill. And so what we've added in here is some small pea gravel, just to give it that added drainage, so that when it rains and the water starts to come down this hill here, it'll drain nicely through that rock or through those stones, and it won't sit in there and rot our wood of our beds. April 4th. Happy birthday to my hubby. And today is also the second day that we have spent filling our new raised beds. And I want to show you what level of completion each of the beds are in. But first, I just want you to take a look at our new arch trellises that we've added. So we have 2 cattle panels going from bed 1 to bed 2. And then we have another 2 cattle panels going from bed 3 to bed 4. And so let's just take a quick look at the inside because they're all at different levels of completion. So bed 1 currently has logs and twigs and some wood chips, and there's a bit of old soil from planters as well as some horse manure and straw on it. Bed 2 has the exact same thing as bed 1, except that we've started adding more wood to it, more branches and twigs and whatnot. I'm currently waiting for my helper to come back out so he can go get another load for me. Bed 3 is a little bit further along. It has the level of, or the extra added branches. I've also added some soil into it. And the reason I'm doing that, like I mentioned earlier, is so that the whole box will have that aeration that we need, so that, or drainage, so that when it rains or we water the bed, those logs and stumps on the bottom will soak that water up and decompose. And so bed 4 is the furthest along right now. I've started adding wood chips on top of the soil. And so once I get a thin layer of wood chips added to the whole bed and it fills in all of those cracks and crevices, then I'll start adding a little bit more horse manure, and then we'll do another thin layer of branches again. Day 3 of filling the raised beds using the Hügelkultur method has come to an end. After 3 days and a lot of help, thank you to my husband and my son Wesley and my dad, I have just about completed this project. So these raised beds are 5 by 10 feet long, and they are about 3.5 feet tall. So they're fairly big beds. All the material to make these beds came from a barn, so it was recycled barn material. And it took us 3 days to fill these using the Hügelkultur method of layering them with logs and twigs and yard waste and wood chips and manure and some soil in there as well, and then filling the top 8 inches with compost. So we're just about done. The last bed needs probably about another quarter of dirt, but it's been a long day and I still have tomorrow off, so I will finish that off tomorrow. But it has saved me so much money using this method. If you haven't tried this method, I would suggest that you think about it and maybe try it. Thanks for spending time with me.